Beyond the door, I opened pink and blue balloons floated in the air, and laughter filled the party venue. On the wall, large letters spelled out, "Welcome Baby Harrison." The table was piled high with baby shower gifts, and there was my mother Gina beaming as she guided the guests around. This was supposed to be the venue for the housewarming party I had planned using $4,000 of my own money. Instead, it had been repurposed into a baby shower for my stepsister Brittany. "Michelle, you finally made it," my mother spotted me and waved. Standing just behind her was my stepfather Richard, his face smug with pride. And there, lounging on an extravagant couch, was Brittany, the center of attention. She wore a green maternity dress, gently caressing her baby bump. I returned the smile and stepped inside. Outwardly composed, I was seething inside. "Congratulations, Brittany." I approached and handed her the small gift I had prepared. She was 25 years old, yet had never achieved anything on her own. Still, she enjoyed the unconditional affection of our parents and lived a life where she was always treated like someone special. "Thanks, Michelle." She looked at me with a slight hint of caution. She avoided eye contact because she knew exactly who this party was originally meant for. "Everyone, may I have your attention?" Suddenly, my mother stood in the center of the room and tapped her glass. "Today is a special day. Brittany and Kevin are expecting a new life, bringing even more joy into our family. Let's raise our glasses in celebration." Glasses clinked cheers, filled the room, and in that moment, something within me crystallized. Never again will I allow anyone to deny my worth. I raised my glass, drawing everyone's gaze, and I prepared to reveal the truth I had buried for 18 long years. I am Michelle Smith, 32 years old. I'm the Vice President of Global Insight, the creator of the Market Pulse system, which has brought in hundreds of millions in profit for the company. After I informed my grandparents of my recent promotion, their congratulatory message arrived quickly. I was replying to them when my secretary Tiffany entered the room. "Michelle, a document just came in from the legal department." "Thanks. Oh, by the way, Tiffany, how are the preparations going for the housewarming party at the new villa?" "Everything's on track. The real estate agent just dropped off the keys. The lakefront view is absolutely stunning." I nodded, gazing out the window at the Boston skyline. The new villa by the lake in Massachusetts wasn't just a property. It was a dream I had chased for years. The morning mist dancing on the water's surface, the trees rustling in the wind, and above all, the silence untouched by anyone else's demands. It was my sanctuary. The small gathering I had planned for the weekend was meant to mark the beginning of a new chapter in my life. "Although there's one thing," Tiffany added, hesitating. She picked up the tablet from my desk and scrolled. "There's an email from your mother. It's about the party preparations." The moment those words left her lips, my face stiffened like stone, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. My relationship with my mother Gina couldn't be described as merely complicated. When I was 12, my father James passed away from cancer. After that, she began to change. Without even a proper grieving period, she married a man named Richard Harrison, and little by little I began to fade from her new life. Things worsened even further when Brittany, my stepsister, was born from that marriage. My mother's affection, my place in the home, and eventually even my chance at education, everything was taken from me under the guise of Brittany's needs. "I'll check on it later," I told Tiffany, but inside a deep sense of unease had already begun to grow, because in my entire life, messages from my mother rarely ever brought good news. The shadows of the skyscrapers outside stretched long across the floor. A glance at the clock on my office wall told me I had only 15 minutes left before the next meeting. I took a deep breath, calmed my thoughts, and turned my attention back to the new project proposal laid out in front of me. The rollout plan for Market Pulse in the Asian market represented the next giant leap in my career. Even now, as the Vice President of Global Insight and a recognized figure in the industry, I never let my guard down, because from a young age, I had learned the harsh truth: let your guard down and everything you value can be taken from you. After a grueling 3-hour board meeting, I returned to my office, my steps heavy with exhaustion. Tiffany was waiting with a worried look. Michelle, about the email from your mother, I think it may need a response. Based. I let out a deep sigh, sat down at my computer and opened the email with tense fingers. The subject line was plain, Michelle, there's an important update about the party. And attached to it was a single photo. The moment I opened the photo, it felt as though the blood in my veins stopped cold. The lake house living room was decorated with pink and blue ribbons, and across the wall were the words, Welcome, baby Harrison. My housewarming party had been transformed without my knowledge into a baby shower for Brittany. I instinctively grabbed my phone and dialed my mother. Hello, Michelle, perfect timing. I was just about to talk to you about the party. What is that photo? Why is the house decorated for a baby shower? I cut her off, my voice sharp and demanding. Michelle, just listen. This is really important for Brittany. Her voice had that familiar pleading tone, but underneath it carried the same manipulative edge I had known since childhood. It was the tone that said, I'm pretending to listen to you, but the decision's already been made. This whole mess had started about a month ago. I'd been completely immersed in the international rollout of Market Pulse, a major project at Global Insight, and hadn't had time to handle the detailed planning for the housewarming of the new lakefront villa I'd bought in Massachusetts. So I transferred $4,000 to my mother, a generous amount, and asked her to take care of everything, the invitations, catering, decorations, and schedule for the day. It wasn't just a party, it was a celebration of years of effort and achievement, a symbol of a new chapter in my life. Why would you turn my housewarming party into Brittany's baby shower? That's a completely different event. I was struggling to keep my emotions in check. But she's pregnant, Michelle. This is huge for the family. She spoke like she was explaining something self-evident, something I clearly just didn't get. Richard and I were going to be grandparents for the first time. Isn't that something worth celebrating together as a family? And there it was again, the same old pattern that had ruled our lives for 18 years. When it came to Brittany, everything and everyone came second. That pattern hadn't changed since my mother married Richard when I was 14. I get that, but her celebration should be a separate event. I've already invited friends and colleagues. They're more than welcome. We can all celebrate Brittany together. I let out a slow breath. Somewhere in the middle of this conversation, I already knew nothing I said would matter. My opinion had never been part of the equation. Wait, have you already sent the invitations? Yes, they went out yesterday. We titled it A Special Celebration with the Smith Family. I wanted the details to be a surprise. Anger surged inside me, but I held it down as I spoke. I sent that $4,000 for my party. Oh, Michelle, come on. You're successful. You just became vice president. You bought a beautiful new villa. Brittany has nothing. She needs this celebration. That same logic, always the same because I'd succeeded. I was expected to give up what was mine for her. Everything's already in motion, she continued with no trace of guilt. Richard's thrilled. He can't wait to become a grandfather. As I listened to her words, I drew in a long breath. Is Brittany's boyfriend coming to the party? I asked calmly. I needed to know if he was in on this. Of course. Kevin is such a wonderful man, so kind and intelligent. He truly loves Brittany. He's a programmer at an IT firm and has a promising future. Richard really likes him. They're a perfect couple. I see, I said quietly. Isn't it wonderful? Thank you, Michelle. Oh, and Grandma and Grandpa are coming too. We're going to celebrate Brittany and Kevin in style. That stopped me. Wait, Grandma and Grandpa are coming. Yes, I just spoke to them on the phone. They sounded excited. That at least was a small relief. I see. Well then, I'll see you at the party. I tried to keep my voice sounding casual. I knew by then there was no point in arguing with her. What mattered was conserving my strength and choosing the right moment to act. After I hung up, I looked at the photo of the lake house resting on my desk. I took a deep breath and began to steady my thoughts. In business, I'd learned one thing above all, always focus on the end game. This too needed to be handled with strategy, and I had already made up my mind. I picked up my phone and sent a message to my grandparents. See you at the lake house on Saturday. There's something important I need to tell you. The moment I hit send, something inside me settled. The weekend would mark a turning point in my life. Please, this is my room. It has memories of my father. On my way home from the Boston office, I found myself thinking back to when I was 16. It had been 4 years since my father passed away and 2 years since my mother remarried. Michelle Brittany needs a bigger room. There was no warmth in her voice. She had changed after my father's death, and after marrying Richard, she became a completely different person. Now, the only one she seemed to focus on was her daughter, with him Brittany. My bedroom had been my only sanctuary. Sunlight poured in through the south-facing windows. The walls were lined with photos of my father, and the bookshelf he gave me on his last birthday was filled with his books. Please don't take this room away from me. My plea was ignored. Richard spoke coldly instead. I am the head of this household. My decisions are final. Richard prided himself on appearances, always presenting the image of the perfect family. To him, I was simply a flaw in that image. The next day, when I came home from school, all my belongings had been moved to a small guest room. My bedroom became Brittany's. Where's my bookshelf, Dad's books? I asked, my voice shaking. We put them in storage. You're not a little girl anymore, my mother replied. Brittany deserves the best environment. I found the dismantled bookshelf and boxed up books in the storage room. I opened one box and pulled out a physics book, my father's favourite, the one he was reading before he passed. Inside the front cover, he had written, "To Michelle, knowledge is the greatest treasure. With love, Dad." That was the moment I made a vow someday I will stand on my own. Things only got worse from there. Eventually, I was even excluded from the family photo. When I asked, "Am I not part of this family?" my mother simply said, "You weren't standing in front of the camera." But I knew it was deliberate. That night, I clutched a photo of my father and whispered, "One day I'll find my own path, I promise." On the day of the baby shower, I drove to the lake house. I parked the car and took a deep breath. Several cars were already lined up in the yard. Guests had already arrived. From the window, I could see pink and blue balloons. The front door bore a sign, "Welcome Baby Harrison." I grabbed my handbag and checked my reflection in the mirror, a tailored navy blue dress, flawless makeup, and a face radiating confidence. No one could guess the storm brewing inside me. This ends today, I told myself. Then I stepped out of the car and walked toward the entrance. I took another deep breath and reached for the doorknob. Michelle, you have the gift of understanding. It doesn't come from blood, it comes from the heart. Those were the words of my grandfather, Frank. Even now they echo in my mind. It was the spring before high school graduation. I had just received my acceptance letter from Princeton and returned home bursting with joy. But that night, I overheard a conversation between my mother and Richard in the study after dinner. "She's not my blood. Why should I pay for her?" Richard's voice was filled with contempt. "But she's still my daughter." My mother replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Brittany is the only one who matters. That kind of money should be saved for her. Princeton is a luxury." The next day, my mother told me they couldn't pay for my tuition. "Brittany's at a private school and we need to think about her future education too. You can go to the community college in town." That weekend, my grandparents came to visit. Even after my father died, they had never let go of me. "Richard won't pay for your tuition," my grandfather asked calmly. "We'll cover all of it," my grandmother said firmly. "Money only has value when it's used for the right reasons. Your father would agree." My years at Princeton opened up a new world. Everything I am today, I owe it to them. And with those thoughts, I stepped into the villa I had built. About 40 guests were already gathered. My mother wore a white dress. Richard was wearing his usual grey suit. Brittany, glowing in a green maternity gown, sat beside Kevin. I spotted my grandparents standing quietly in the corner and made my way toward them through the crowd. If anyone could be called family, it was them. The courage to speak my truth came from the unconditional love they had always given me. Holding on to that, I took the microphone. May I have everyone's attention, please? My voice echoed through the room, and conversations fell silent. My mother's smile froze. Richard frowned. Thank you all for coming today. Brittany, congratulations. Brittany smiled faintly, but there was a trace of nervousness in her eyes. This party was originally planned as a housewarming celebration for my new villa. I transferred $4,000 to my mother for that purpose, but my celebration was repurposed. It became a baby shower for Brittany. A murmur rippled through the crowd. My mother stood frozen, her face drained of colour. Richard began to approach me. Michelle, now's not the time for this, he said in a low voice. No, Richard, this is exactly the time and everyone needs to hear it. The moment the words left my mouth, he slapped me across the face. A stunned silence fell over the room. Several men rushed in to restrain him. I steadied myself through the sting, then said, You just made it worse. I'm going to tell them everything. For 18 years, I have been second in this family. No less than that. I've been an invisible shadow. I turned toward my grandparents standing quietly in the corner and continued. After my real father passed away, I was treated like I didn't belong to this family. My room was taken from me, my education was denied, and now even the celebration for my new home has been stolen. Kevin looked at Brittany, confusion and shock on his face. Maybe he had never truly understood the dynamics of this family. But today, I'm here to make one thing clear. I am not a victim anymore. I've stood on my own. I've succeeded. I raised my glass and smiled toward my grandparents. A toast to Frank and Helen Smith, my true family. They made it possible for me to attend Princeton. Today, I stand here as Vice President of Global Insight, the creator of the Market Pulse system, and a woman who built her own life. Richard's face darkened. He stepped forward, voice low and threatening. Keep going, and you'll be cut off from this family entirely. No inheritance, nothing. His threats didn't shake me anymore. There's nothing I want from you, Richard. At that moment, my grandfather stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. Actually, I have something to share with all of you. The room fell silent again. There was an undeniable presence in his tone, the quiet authority of a former professor. 3 months ago, Helen and I updated our will. Our home in Cambridge, our entire investment portfolio, and all of our assets will be inherited by Michelle. I could see my mother's face turned utterly white. Dad, what are you talking about? My grandmother stepped in. Gina, this is the result of your choices. You chose your new family and abandoned your daughter. We're simply honouring that choice with our own. But Brittany, my mother murmured. She has you, my grandfather replied flatly. You who ignored Michelle hurt her and today robbed her of joy once again. A heavy silence settled over the room. Suddenly, Brittany shot to her feet, her voice rising in fury. You ruin everything. This is supposed to be my special day. Brittany, Kevin said gently, taking her arm. You used Michelle's money to throw this party. What the hell? You just shut up. Brittany snapped, yanking her arm away. Then Richard raised his voice sharply, stepping forward. Enough, Michelle, get out. You should have never been invited. The room froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. I slowly sat down my wineglass, meeting his gaze squarely. Over 10 years of suppressed pain burned quietly inside me. Get out! I gave a bitter smile. Richard, you can't be further than the truth. I own this lake house. Michelle, that's enough. My mother tried to interject, but I raised a hand. No, what's enough is this. I walked slowly toward Richard. For years you pushed me out of this family, but today is different. This house is mine. I earned it. I paid for it. I stood directly in front of him as his face flushed red. And if anyone needs to leave, it's you. He trembled with rage but couldn't say a word. He had finally realized that my success had completely shattered his authority. My grandfather placed a hand on my shoulder in quiet support. My grandmother joined him, smiling gently. I'm going home with my real family. Before leaving the room, I glanced back one last time. What I saw was a family falling apart, a crumbling facade. Richard's face was red with rage. My mother sat slumped, defeated. Brittany stood crying, her expression a mix of confusion and disbelief. Outside the villa, my grandmother approached me with concern. "Michelle, are you all right?" "I'm fine, thank you," I smiled. "Let's go home," my grandfather said softly, resting his hand on my shoulder. 3 years have passed since that day. I am now the CEO of Global Insight, succeeding the previous CEO, Daniel, and becoming the youngest CEO in the company's history. Before his retirement, Daniel personally named me as his successor. "Michelle, no one senses market movement like you do. This company should follow your vision into the future," he told me. I still remember the way those words moved me. Market Pulse, the data analytics platform I created, had expanded globally and evolved into a multi-billion-dollar business. Our system is now used by government agencies, Fortune 500 firms, and global investment firms alike. When I was featured on the cover of Fortune and named the top of the 30 under 30 list, my grandfather cried tears of joy. "Michelle, your father would be so proud of you wherever he is," he said. "That was the highest praise I could have ever received. From my new penthouse, I can see the Boston skyline stretch endlessly beneath me. At the center of my private study are the bookshelf and collection of books that once belonged to my father, rescued from storage by my grandparents. When I open the physics book he was reading before he passed, still marked with his handwriting, I feel as though we're having a quiet conversation across time. On weekends, I retreat to the lake house, now renovated exactly to my taste, where I invite my grandparents and savor the peace. On the spacious deck, I play chess with my grandfather and listen to his reflections on life. That to me is the greatest luxury. My grandmother still tends to her herb garden, and there's nothing more grounding than sipping her homemade herbal tea while gazing out over the still waters. She often says, "Michelle, we are defined by our choices. You walked a difficult path, but you never gave in to bitterness or vengeance. That is your true strength." Meanwhile, my stepfather struggled to keep up with the rapid changes in the tech industry and was eventually demoted, or so I heard. The company he had worked at for over 20 years shifted to younger leadership. His outdated management style and obsolete technical skills were publicly criticized under the name of corporate restructuring. Ironically, the new data analytics system his company adopted, it was Market Pulse My System. In the end, he was given a choice: accept a 50% pay cut or take early retirement. Prideful as ever, he chose to resign only to discover his expected retirement package had been slashed. He faced significant financial loss. Once a man who looked down on his colleagues, he found himself cast aside with no network left in the industry and no path forward. My mother's real estate business suffered in the downturn, and together they were forced to sell their luxurious home and move into a much humbler place. And the bedroom that had once been mine, taken from me for Brittany's sake, probably belongs to someone else entirely now. Life has a way of making its own corrections. Brittany gave birth safely, but her relationship with Kevin fell apart. According to distant relatives, she's now living back at home with her parents. After becoming CEO, I founded an education foundation, the James Smith Memorial Scholarship, named after my father. The foundation provides educational opportunities for children like me, those who have had their sense of belonging taken from them. I've cut ties with my mother, Richard and Brittany, and in doing so, I finally found peace. My grandparents are my loyal team mentors who appeared at just the right moments in my life. They are my real family. Daniel remains a trusted mentor of mine to this day. His wisdom continues to guide me through every difficult decision. Each morning, as I walk into my office, I pause to greet 2 framed photos on the wall. One is an old family picture, me, my father, and my grandparents. The other was taken the day Market Pulse was patented, my entire team beaming with joy. The pain of my past, the brilliance of my present, it all shaped who I am. Blood doesn't define you. You've always had value from the moment you were born, my grandfather once told me, and now I truly believe that. I've let go of every false relationship and I've stepped forward into a life built with people who genuinely see and respect me. They say success is the best revenge, but for me, success is never about revenge. It is about self-realization. Now I live not to prove my worth, but to pursue my passions and follow my curiosity. I smiled at the photos and walked toward the boardroom because today, once again, I choose to live my story.